chosen ones. 7 signs you are experiencing the dark night of the soul. Be brave. There comes a time on every chosen one's journey when the light begins to dim, when the fire you once carried so boldly within you flickers under the weight of what feels like unbearable darkness. The colors of life begin to fade. You question everything, your purpose, your identity, even your very existence. You feel abandoned by the universe, as though the divine source that once guided you has vanished without a trace. What you are experiencing is not a breakdown, it is not failure, it is not punishment. What you are experiencing is the dark night of the soul, and it is one of the most sacred, terrifying, and transformative initiations a soul can endure. This is the moment the ego begins to dissolve, the illusions fall away, and your soul is stripped bare in order to be reborn. But this path is not for everyone. Only the chosen ones walk through this fire. Only those destined for something greater are broken down in such a way so they can be rebuilt in truth. In the beginning, it doesn't feel spiritual. It feels like everything is collapsing. You may look around and wonder, why is this happening to me? You used to be so certain, so driven, maybe even joyful, but now you feel like a stranger in your own life, like you don't belong anywhere, not even within yourself. You try to pray, but the words feel hollow. You try to meditate, but the silence is deafening. You try to find comfort in the things that once brought you peace, but nothing soothes the ache in your soul. The isolation is real, the confusion is suffocating, and yet this is exactly where you are meant to be. Because the dark night doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to strip away everything that is not truly you. It comes to burn down the false self, your conditioned beliefs, your attachments, your illusions, so that your soul can emerge in its purest form.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
One of the first signs that you are entering the dark night is a profound sense of emptiness. Not the kind that comes from boredom or loneliness, but a deep existential void that nothing external can fill. You may look at your job, your relationships, your possessions, and feel absolutely nothing. You begin to wonder if anything has meaning. But this numbness is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that your soul is rejecting the illusion. It is no longer willing to play the game of pretending that fulfillment exists in the external world. The emptiness is not a curse. It is an invitation to go inward, to face the truth of who you really are beneath all the roles you've been playing. Another powerful sign is the collapse of your identity. Who you thought you were begins to disintegrate. You may no longer resonate with the things you once loved. You may feel disconnected from your friends, your family, even your own goals. It's as if your old life is dissolving in front of your eyes, and in many ways it is. This is terrifying because we have been taught to cling to our identity, to find safety in labels and structure. But the dark night doesn't care about your comfort, it cares about your truth. And if your identity was built on anything false, on people-pleasing, on trauma, on external validation, it has to collapse. Because the soul cannot be confined by a mask. It demands realness. It demands liberation. Then comes the silence, the spiritual silence. The feeling that God, Source, the universe, whatever you call it, has gone quiet. You may have once felt divinely guided, supported by synchronicities, signs, and inner knowing. Now it feels like your prayers hit the ceiling and fall back to the floor. This silence is one of the most painful parts of the dark night, It tests your faith in a way nothing else can. But here's a truth that few understand. Silence is not the absence of guidance. It is the space in which your soul learns to listen beyond the noise. It is in the silence that true connection is forged, not through words, not through signs, but through pure presence. If you are in this silence, I want you to know you have not been abandoned. You are being initiated. There is also the emotional purge, waves of grief, anger, despair, fear. Emotions you may not even understand begin to surface without warning. Many chosen ones think they are going crazy during this phase. But these emotions are not random. They are old energies, unresolved traumas, suppressed parts of yourself rising to be seen. You are not breaking down, you are cleansing. Your soul is detoxing from lifetimes of pain, from years of pretending, from every time you silenced your own truth to make others comfortable. These emotions must be felt, not fixed. They must be honored, not denied. This is sacred work. This is soul surgery. And then there is the loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood. You may try to explain what you're going through, but no one seems to get it. You feel like an alien in a world that seems obsessed with superficiality while you are drowning in depth. But this loneliness is also part of the journey. It is the space in which the chosen ones are forged. You are being set apart, not because you are broken, but because you are being prepared. Those who are meant to lead others into light must first know the darkness intimately. You are not alone. You are part of a lineage of souls who have walked this path before you. Your pain is not meaningless. It is making you. So I ask you, what if this darkness is not here to destroy you, but to awaken you? What if everything you are losing is exactly what is standing between you and your true power? What if this is not the end, but the beginning of becoming who you were always meant to be? Because the truth is, the dark night of the soul is not a punishment, it is a rebirthing. It is a sacred death of the false self. And yes, it is painful. Yes, it is terrifying, but on the other side of it is a freedom so profound, a clarity so pure, a power so undeniable, that no part of you will wish to return to who you once were. Fire of transformation. Why the darkness is the doorway to your true power. When everything you once relied on begins to fall away, when the illusions you clung to start to burn, when the light seems to abandon you and all that remains is silence and shadow, that is not the end. That is the beginning of the most sacred transformation you will ever undergo. The dark night of the soul is not meant to break you. It is meant to strip you down to the essence of who you truly are. It is the fire that incinerates every lie you've believed about yourself. It is the holy furnace where the false self dies and the real self is revealed. The chosen ones are not marked by their ease in life. They are marked by their willingness to walk through the fire and not turn away. The darkness you are experiencing is not random. It is intelligently designed by your soul. You didn't stumble into this phase by accident. You were called into it. Your higher self, the divine intelligence within you, knew that in order to step fully into your purpose, you had to let go of everything that was keeping you small, safe, and asleep. And the only way to do that was to take you into the depths, into the places where your fears live, into the corners of your psyche where your unworthiness hides. into the basement of your being where all the stories of not enough have been collecting dust for years. You are not being punished, you are being purified. This is what the fire does. It purifies. You may feel like you're losing your mind, like your identity is collapsing, like your emotions are too heavy to bear. But beneath all of that, something ancient is awakening. The version of you that has always known the truth. The version of you that remembers why you came here. The version of you that holds wisdom far beyond this single lifetime. But to access that version, you must be willing to let go of everything you think you are. You must surrender the masks, the roles, the stories. You must stop trying to control the process and let the fire do its work. We live in a world that fears darkness. We are taught to avoid pain, to numb discomfort, to run from anything that doesn't feel good. But the soul operates on a different law. The soul knows that darkness is not the opposite of light, it is the womb of light. It is the place where all true growth begins. Seeds do not sprout on the surface, they break open underground. And so must you. You are not falling apart, you are breaking open, you are not being buried, you are being planted. And when the time is right, you will rise, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. You see, the dark night does not just take things away, it reveals what cannot be taken. It shows you what is eternal in you. You lose the job, the relationship, the ambition, the identity, and in that loss you discover something unshakable. You discover presence, you discover resilience, you discover the quiet, unmovable truth of your own being. And that truth is where your power lives, not in pretending everything is okay, not in bypassing your pain with platitudes, but in standing naked in the fire and saying, I am still here. That is power. That is truth. That is what the chosen ones are made of. There is a stillness that comes after the anguish, a moment when the storm begins to pass and you realize you survived. You realize that the things you thought would destroy you were actually the things that set you free. You realize that you don't need to cling to external validation because your worth is not up for debate. You realize that you are not here to fit in, to be liked, to play it safe. You are here to become light in the densest places. And the only way to carry that kind of light is to first walk through your own shadows. The fire teaches you discernment. It teaches you to stop giving your energy to what drains you, to stop betraying yourself to please others, to stop chasing things that were never meant for you. It burns away everything that is not aligned with your essence. And yes, that hurts. Yes, there will be grief. But with grief comes clarity. With loss comes space. And in that space, you begin to create a life that is rooted in truth. You begin to attract relationships that match your soul, not your wounds. You begin to make decisions from love, not fear. You begin to live not as a version of yourself molded by the world, but as the version that was forged in the fire. So I ask you, what if this fire is not here to punish you, but to prepare you? What if the pain you're feeling is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that something real is being born? What if the darkness you're walking through is the exact path that will lead you to your greatest light? You don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need to feel strong every moment. You just need to keep walking. You just need to trust that your soul knows what it's doing. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are in the fire, and the fire is sacred. Let it work on you. Let it shape you. Let it burn away everything you are not, so that you can finally remember who you are. Because on the other side of this darkness is a clarity so sharp, a power so pure, a light so undeniable, that you will look back and thank the fire for breaking you open. The silent rebirth. When the pain fades and the truth emerges, there comes a moment, often without warning, when the storm begins to quiet. The fire that once consumed every corner of your life begins to relent. It doesn't happen with fireworks or fanfare. It doesn't announce itself with divine trumpets or thunderous clarity. It happens in stillness. In small, almost imperceptible ways. You wake up one morning and realize the heaviness in your chest is a little lighter. You walk through your day and notice that the world, though still raw, no longer feels like it's collapsing around you. You begin to breathe, not just physically, but spiritually. This is the silent rebirth. This is the moment your soul begins to emerge from the ashes, not as something new, but as something remembered. Because in truth, the dark night of the soul doesn't create a new you, it reveals the real you. The one buried under layers of fear, conditioning, and self-forgetting. The chosen ones know this moment not by the absence of pain, but by the presence of peace. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is subtle, reverent. Like the first light of dawn after a long, endless night, you begin to sense that something within you has shifted. Some deep internal anchor has been planted. You may still be grieving, you may still be healing, but beneath it all you feel a quiet knowing. I made it through. Not because you found all the answers, not because everything outside of you magically fixed itself, but because something inside you refused to give up. Something ancient, something divine, something eternal. And now, in this space where the fire once raged, you find a kind of emptiness that feels sacred. Not the emptiness of despair, but the emptiness of possibility. A blank canvas waiting for truth to paint itself across your life. You no longer move from survival, you begin to move from presence. You begin to ask deeper questions. Not how can I get what I want, but what is truly aligned with my soul. You no longer chase validation or external significance. You begin to walk with quiet purpose, guided not by fear, but by resonance. You start trusting your instincts in a way you never could before, because now you understand how your soul speaks, and it doesn't shout, it whispers. This is the rebirth that the dark night prepares you for, a life built on inner truth, not outer expectations, a path forged not by approval, but by alignment. You begin to notice the things you used to tolerate no longer feel sustainable. The relationships, the habits, the environments that once felt familiar now feel foreign. Your energy becomes more discerning. You start choosing peace over drama, depth over distraction, authenticity over acceptance. You become more intentional with your time, your words, your presence. And without even trying, your external world begins to shift to match your internal clarity. But this rebirth is not about becoming perfect. It's not about floating through life in some enlightened state, untouched by pain or challenge. It's about integrity. It's about being able to stand in your truth even when it's uncomfortable. It's about choosing yourself even when it costs you something. It's about showing up fully, even when the world wants you to shrink. The chosen ones know that real light is not soft and fluffy. It is fierce. It is the kind of light that exposes, that heals, that transforms. And to carry that kind of light, you must be willing to be seen, not just in your strength, but in your vulnerability. Rebirth is not a destination, it is a way of being. It is the willingness to die to who you were, again and again, in service of who you are becoming. It is the humility to admit you don't have it all figured out, and the courage to keep walking anyway. It is the grace to forgive yourself for the roles you once played, and the strength to embody the truth you now carry. And perhaps most importantly, it is the return to love, not the romantic kind, but the sacred kind, the kind of love that sees through the illusion of separation, the kind of love that reminds you that you are not alone, that you never were. You begin to see others differently too. Compassion arises, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Because now you know what it feels like to be lost, to be broken, to question everything. You no longer judge others from the surface. You recognize their pain because you've met your own. And in that recognition, you begin to serve, not from a place of ego or saviorhood, but from presence, from the understanding that your light is not meant to shine at others, but with them. You become a mirror, a reminder, a quiet beacon for those still walking through their own darkness. And so I ask you, what are you willing to let die for the sake of who you're becoming? What old identity, what belief, what attachment are you ready to release so that your soul can breathe freely? The silent rebirth doesn't require fanfare. It requires honesty. It requires stillness. It requires a willingness to be stripped bare, to stand in the ashes of your old self and say yes to the unknown. Because the truth is, everything you seek, peace, purpose, connection, clarity, it's already inside you. The dark night didn't take you away from it. It took away everything that was blocking it. You are not who you were, and that is a gift. You have been reborn, not because you escaped the fire, but because you allowed it to change you. Now you walk differently, you speak differently, you see differently, not because you are better than others, but because you remembered something they've forgotten. That true power comes not from what you have, but from who you are. And who you are is light forged in darkness, truth refined in silence, love reborn in fire. The return of the chosen, living with purpose after the dark night ends. When the darkness has passed, when the silence has spoken, when the fire has left its mark on your soul and the ashes have settled, there is a moment, a breath, a realization. You are still here, not the same, not untouched, but reborn. And in that rebirth, something ancient awakens within you, a knowing, a calling, a quiet but unstoppable force that begins to rise from the depths of who you now are. This is not just survival, this is not just healing, this is returning to the world not as the person who once sought to fit in, but as someone who now walks with a quiet thunder. The chosen ones do not return to reclaim what they lost, they return to create what never existed before, a new way, a new path, a new light. They carry the codes of the soul in their eyes, in their voice, in the way they move through the world. They are no longer chasing purpose, they are the purpose. Living with purpose after the dark night ends doesn't mean you have a perfect plan. It means you are finally willing to listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the whispers of your inner compass. You begin to realize that purpose isn't a destination. It's not a job title, a brand, or a mission statement. Purpose is presence. Purpose is alignment. Purpose is saying yes to the truth in each moment, even when it's inconvenient, even when it requires courage, even when it costs you comfort. You no longer move from pressure. You move from passion. You no longer seek to impress. You seek to express. You no longer need permission to be who you are. You are the permission for yourself and for others. You start to see your life not as a series of random events, but as a sacred design. Every heartbreak, every loss, every night you thought would never end, it all shaped you, it all prepared you. The pain didn't just leave scars, it left maps. Maps that help you guide others, maps that remind you of the terrain you've crossed, the strength you've found, the truths you've uncovered. And now, as you return, you carry those maps. Not to boast, but to serve, to be a light in the maze for those still walking through their own darkness. Not with answers, but with presence. Not with perfection, but with authenticity. You begin to speak differently. Your words carry weight, not because they are loud, but because they are real. You no longer need to convince people of your value. You know who you are. You no longer shrink yourself to be digestible. You show up fully, knowing that those who are meant for you will feel your frequency and rise to meet it. And those who don't, you let them go with love. This is the freedom of the chosen ones, not needing to be understood by everyone because you are deeply understood by yourself. And now the world feels different. Not because it has changed, but because you have. You see beauty where you once saw chaos. You feel gratitude where you once felt lack. You move slowly, intentionally, gracefully, because you know the value of each moment. You've seen what it's like to lose everything, and now that you've returned, you hold life with reverence. You don't take the sun for granted. You don't take love for granted. You don't take your voice, your breath, your being for granted. You know this life is sacred, and you are here to live it, awake. So I ask you, what are you here to build now that you've been broken and rebuilt? What truth are you ready to embody now that you've walked through the illusions? What light are you ready to shine now that you've faced your own shadows? Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for the world to understand. The chosen ones lead not because they are perfect, but because they are real. Because they are brave enough to return. Because they are willing to carry the torch of truth even when it's heavy, even when it's lonely, even when it costs them everything they once thought they needed. You've been through the darkness, you've seen what most run from, and now you rise, not as the same person, but as the embodiment of purpose, presence, and power. This is your return. The world has been waiting. Now it's time to live what you've become.